What is your favorite, holy crap, this actually works, trick? Read in a tween magazine, might have been American Girl or something similar, years and years ago, a tip to help you fall asleep where you slowly tense all your muscles as much as you can, then release the tension all at once. I was amazed at how much more relaxed I felt when I tried it. Years later, I realized this was basically mimicking what happens when you orgasm, without the sex part. So take that as you will, but hey, it works either way. Story 2. When I was a little kid, I was playing in my dad's office while he was in a meeting and was drawing dinosaurs on his dry erase board. Unfortunately, I was using permanent marker and I got so scared I would get in trouble, I cried. His secretary heard the commotion and was nice enough to show me that if you draw over the lines with a dry erase marker, it'll all come off when you erase it. She was also nice enough to take me to the bakery across the street and get me a cookie. Story 3. In the 1990s, I worked on a flight control system for a military aircraft, i.e. plane will crash without this working correctly machine. And we had someone on another aircraft system who felt their system should be able to reset/restart our system whenever it seemed fit, as opposed to trusting the quadruple redundant system that had been designed from the ground up to handle faults and errors. All our senior engineers thought it was a very bad idea to reset a flight control system in flight and voiced this in no uncertain terms. Thankfully, they won out. The other fellow felt slighted by this. Story 4. Listening to a song while reading along to the lyrics after it's been in my head all day to get it out. I don't even know how many times this has saved my sanity. A few add-ons. Wow, this got more upvotes than I thought it would. The reading along is just a way to say concentrating on the lyrics/tune, as that's what makes the trick work. If this doesn't work for an instrumental, I guess just imagine it's the background track for your life and roll with it? IDK. Sometimes you're just effed in the ear by life. Story 5. Nuke a couple of potatoes and put them in your coat pockets. Aluminum foil cover optional. Voila! Hand warmers that stay warm for hours. Bonus. You can eat them later. Aluminum foil hat optional. Edit. No aluminum foil. It restricts airflow and fosters bacterial growth. Thanks, Hella Holly and others. Story 6. I'm always way too hot when I try to fall asleep, but I can't sleep with open windows in the winter, so I keep a couple of oranges frozen outside the window and I just toss one into bed. Night snack and keeps me cool without having to get up out of bed. Win-win unless you fall asleep and crush the orange, but at least you got some sleep, so that's still kind of a win. I never expected this post to gain such traction, or I'd made it clear, so I guess I'll edit in some common questions. I rarely eat them before sleep. It's either breakfast or a snack if I wake up at 3 a.m. My teeth are fine. Ice packs would work as well, but you can't eat them and it doesn't feel as natural. Fans work, but I have a bad habit of ruining them. It's not as good as under blanket cooling anyways. I like to keep them in my armpits, but not always. Sometimes they just roll around in bed. Sometimes I put one on my belly button and pretend I'm a giant teeing up my ball for a galactic game of golf. I am almost certainly a human, I think. I'm single and ready to mingle. Thank you for the gold, kind stranger. So I'm not hating. Definitely not hating. This is wild, though. I even reread it and still don't quite understand what they're talking about here. Putting cold oranges under their armpits to help them sleep and then potentially eating them later? Can't say I understand it, but as someone who also needs the room to be cold when I fall asleep, I can appreciate the effort to pull out all the stops to be comfortable and cool before laying down for the night. Moving on. Story 7. Kinda niche, but I work as a production tech. One of the companies I work with has a few hog lighting consoles. These consoles sometimes don't want to boot up, and when I found myself in that situation, my coworker said, pick it up about 6 to 10 inches and just drop it. I looked at him like he was crazy, because they're expensive, and he calmly says, just do it. So I did it. And F a duck, wouldn't you know it? It worked, and continues to work with every hog I come across. Edit. Yes, I've heard of percussive maintenance. However, I never thought of using gravity to induce it. I love that it's so widely accepted. So all those saying you're going to try this with your grandmas, from what I've been told, that will kill. Please percussive maintain responsibly and don't kill your grandmas. Bless up and F coop. Story 8. If you smoke too much weed or overdo it with edibles and are feeling too high, chew on a peppercorn and let it slide under your tongue for about a minute. You'll feel fine in less than 5 minutes. If you're on edibles, you may have to repeat this every 30 minutes to an hour until you have metabolized all the THC. You can also just smell some ground pepper, but it takes a bit longer and does not last as long. This works because a substance in black pepper called piperine blocks cannabis receptors. So I feel like sniffing pepper is opening up a can of worms for insane nostril pain. Yeah, I think I'll just come down from the high, as the psychedelic gods intended. Story 9. Using a credit card to open a locked door. I had locked my girlfriend and I out of her apartment by pulling the locked door shut behind us and leaving without the key. When we returned and realized what we had done, I was able to slide the card in between the door and the door jamb and push back the bolt, opening the door. I scored major points with the misses, but we're both alarmed with how easy it was. Needless to say, we used a deadbolt when leaving the apartment from then on. Story 10. My daughter, who is 6, was crying because we broke a random rock open she found and it wasn't a geode. She was so upset. Being a dad, I let her know that geodes are really hard to find and crying won't help anything. And she cries too much over things and crying won't make it turn into a geode. I sound like a dick when I type it out like this. And she told me that crying does help her feel better if she's sad, and that's why she cries sometimes. That hurt my heart that I had been telling her not to cry when it's something that helps her feel better. I don't tell her that anymore and just let her snuggle up and cry as much as she wants. Even though crying doesn't help me, it may help others. Let your kids cry when they feel it. Story 11. When your car overheats, turn up your heater to full blast while driving. Roll windows down if it's summertime so you don't bake. It helps to keep your engine cooler than it would otherwise be until you get to a safe spot to stop, or to a nearby repair shop. After I broke up with my ex, about 2 weeks afterwards, my radiator busted, and I didn't know who to call for help. I ate crow and called him because he knew a few things about cars, yet at the same time was skeptical because he had a reason to give me horrible advice and screw me over. Lucky for me, he was a good guy, and his advice saved my car. Story 12. I get horribly morning sick during the first half of pregnancy. One of the biggest struggles is staying hydrated. I try to eat or drink anything and it just comes right back up, hence the dehydration. However, this is my 3rd time through, and I just figured out that if I wake up in the middle of the night, that my nausea is greatly reduced and I can drink water. It might not sound like much, but if you've been dehydrated before, then you know how wonderful it is to drink something. I basically can't drink anything all day long, but I've trained myself to wake up and take a gulp of water every time I toss or turn throughout the night. It has been such a game changer, and while I'm still sick, I'm not dehydrated. Story 13. Apple cider vinegar and warts. Just take a Q-tip end and soak it in ACV, then place it over the wart and put a Band-Aid on top. Continue the process each night until it's gone. Had to deal with some earlier in life and no amount of freezing helped. They would die, but they seemed to always come back/return. ACV worked flawlessly and they never returned. So as of right this second of me recording this audio file, I have a wart on my pinky that I have currently been treating with ACV. I had invested probably a combined $600 of copays having my finger cryo-frozen to get rid of the wart, and it just kept coming back. So I'm doing the ACV now, and it is absolutely killing off the wart. It hurts like hell overnight. I mean, you really have to take some melatonin or Benadryl or something to knock you out and get you through the night. But when you wake up every morning, you just peel back another layer of it, and eventually you get to the core and you can get it out. So I can attest to this personally, that the apple cider vinegar trick on warts does work. Story 14. My mom loves to collect containers to store random crap, and converted me to do also, and both of us were stumped on how to get rid of the adhesive leftover from labels. I went online and found a post that said a mixture of olive oil and baking soda will take the glue right off. I kind of laughed at it, thinking it was another joke post, because how can baking soda and oil, 2 items we consume every day, be used to remove something like adhesives? Still, there was no real alternative since neither of us wanted to go buy Goo Gone because of the stench, so we tried it out. To our surprise, the mixture worked like a charm, and all of the adhesive and sticker residue came right off after letting the mixture sit on the containers for a bit. Now we have drawers full of containers full of various spices and tools that once held other spices, snacks, and foods. Story 15. I had really bad vertigo when I rolled over a month out of nowhere. I'd roll over and it felt like I was still rolling for a good 20 seconds. I eventually looked up some YouTube video on it. I didn't expect much, but one video told me to lie on my back on the bed and lean my head off the bed as far as it could go back, then hold for 10 seconds, then move my head up to even level for 10 seconds, and finally bring my head up so that my chin is pushed into my neck, all while laying on my back still, and hold for 10. I felt really sick after for 30 minutes, but after it was completely cured. Story 16. I work with children, and there's a lot of things they don't like to do but needs to get done. Often, the phrasing of what needs to happen can do the trick, such as, I know you don't like Brussels sprouts, so would you like carrots or green beans? Or would you want to eat 6 pieces of broccoli or 3 to go with your chicken? Wherein the answer is in the question and there's no opting out of the vegetables. But it seems like they get to pick the least horrible option. Story 17. Small human contact with people we pass by in life keeps me centered and stops the shyness of meeting new people. Making eye contact, smiling, and saying nice or funny things to strangers. Occasionally someone blanks you, but the vast majority of times it starts a little convo, a little bit of human contact. You never know. Perhaps you're the first person that day who's acknowledged their existence. Simple examples. Saying good morning to the people at the bus stop. I said choices to someone standing looking at a display in the supermarket a short while ago. They laughed and I laughed a little too. Small human contact. Story 18. Use a dice to make decisions where there doesn't seem to be one right way in sight, even after all the pros and cons. But since it's not a coin, you can expand on options with compromises. It's way less effing stressful. Also, if you're like, no, not that, the process forces you to reconcile what your preference really is. I also use tarot to figure out what my instincts are. In the scientific sense, it's just common symbols that you apply meaning to, but can be useful to draw out your buried thoughts/feelings with how you interpret the symbols. Story 19. Probably going to get crap, but the keto diet is the only diet that's actually worked for me. I started at 190 pounds back in October, and as of this morning, I'm 163 pounds, and that includes my brief hiatus in December. Very hard to resist desserts during Christmas. It was tough at first, cooking all my meals, but it's become so easy, it's a part of my routine. I don't plan on doing it forever, but it's been great for slimming down so I can start working out and sculpting my body. Story 20. When negotiating, after the other party throws out terms you don't like, asking for a raise that's too high, offering a price for your item that's too low, etc., say nothing. Wait for them to speak next, and the next thing out of their mouth will be a more fair number. The silence makes them paranoid that their number was way off base, that you're either angry or shocked or amused, and they tend to back down. Story 21. Meditation. It takes a little time and practice, but oh my goodness, is it worth it. Read about it and do it, and don't ever stop. Don't think you don't have time. You can meditate and be mindful every single second of the day if you want to. The realization that none of this world really matters, everything is beautiful, there's no right or wrong, assuming you don't hurt another being, is just simply amazing. If you want to be at peace with any situation, start meditating and stop reacting to those thoughts in your head. Story 22. It's nice to go into a doctor's office and simply get healed. You walk in with a debilitating condition, and you walk out normal. That has only happened to me once. I had positional vertigo, which means that I would get vertigo when I experienced certain changes in position. When I laid down in bed, the room would start spinning. Badly. Eventually, it would settle down. Then later, I would get up to go to the bathroom and end up crashing sideways into a wall because the same extreme dizziness took hold when I got up also. It was the changes in position that caused it. Turns out, this is caused by calcium deposits in your inner ear, and there's a set of maneuvers that a trained medical professional can do, which will, step by step, move these calcium deposits out of your inner ear, and miraculously, the symptoms go away as soon as this is done successfully. Story 23. I work in the utility industry, and some old-timers have a trick using what they call witch wands, and it blows my mind that it works. If looking for an underground pipe that's not marked is when you use the witch wands, you take 2 thin pieces of copper wire and bend them into a couple L's. You lightly hold the shorter end with the longer end parallel to the ground. As you walk by the underground pipe, you're looking for the witch wands, which will turn and face each other. I've seen it work, and it blows my mind. Story 24. Drinking hot gelatin to stop your period. I have one of those Nexplan and birth control implants, and sometimes it causes periods that last a very long time. I did a lot of research into how to stop my period and got suggestions ranging from eating a spoonful of coconut oil to taking a bunch of ibuprofen. The gelatin thing was the only thing that seemed to make any difference at all. Apparently, gelatin is good for other things too, like irritable stomach and achy joints. IDK why it works, but it's amazing. I usually mix a tablespoon of dry gelatin with stevia and lime juice and blend with hot water. Tastes like warm lime jello. Story 25. If you make a mistake or something that embarrasses you in public, such as flub a word, Freudian slip, bust your ass, be theatrical about it. Laugh even if you don't feel like laughing. Also, your own mistakes. If you're wrong about something, just say, I was really speaking from a place of ignorance there. It takes all the fire out under anyone trying to mock you, and you will actually appear smarter for it, even if you still don't understand. Had a coworker who loved to point out when people were wrong, even when she didn't know either. A simple, seems I was wrong. How'd you come across that answer? You'll both potentially learn something and take the hot air right out of the balloon. Story 26. Locating underground utilities, Cat V coax and power at least, by making 2 diving rods out of solid copper ground wire. Take 2 roughly 40-inch pieces of 6 AWG, solid, non-insulated wire. Make a 90-degree bend in each piece about 8 inches from one end to create L shapes. Hold the short segments, one in each hand. Spin them in your hands a few times. Then hold the long segments pointing away from you, parallel to the ground and to each other, like aiming 2 long fake guns. Walk across the general area where the underground line should be, going perpendicular to them. The 2 copper divining rods in your hands will rotate towards each other and line up directly over the underground wires. I was sure the 2 guys who showed me the trick were trolling me hard until I actually tried it. Story 27. For first or second degree burns, wrap the burn with aluminum foil for about 20 minutes. It works amazingly well. I found it on the net years ago with a link to the Life magazine article from the 1950s. My guess is it somehow soothes the nervous system by reflecting the heat back to the burn. I've used it several times both for myself and my wife. Drastically reduces the swelling and the pain. It seems to be permanent. Story 28. Way better than a fly swatter at killing that one annoying big-ass fly that somehow made its way into the house and won't leave you alone. One of those thicker rubber bands. Wait for it to land, aim and fire. The elastic moves way faster, is way more accurate, and has less resistance, meaning you have more chance of actually killing the fly. Started doing this after reading some Tumblr story of a kid killing a wasp this way, and it actually works, and I'm semi-famous for it at work. Coworkers tried it at home with similar results. So I can't speak to this method, but I will encourage, for those of you crazy pyromaniacs out there, electric fly swatters absolutely do the trick. And like when you hit them, they just turn into vapor instantaneously. It's actually kind of fun, but mean. I don't know. Pick your poison. Story 29. My a-hole can fit a car tire. If anyone actually reads this, keep in mind that an average a-hole of a human being can dilate between 2 to 4 centimeters. One car tire is roughly 500 by 200 centimeters. So yeah, fitting a car tire in my a-hole is probably a world record and should deserve a Guinness Book of World Records entry. My first piece of advice is, if you think you can beat this record, is don't even try. My second piece of advice is, if the first piece of advice is ignored, start small and gradually move on to bigger things. Anal bleeding ruins many articles of clothing, including, but not limited to, socks and shoes. Actually, while we're on the topic of anal stretching and clothes being ruined, you should know that once the anus is stretched beyond 8 centimeters, the sphincter is rendered useless. Gravity will just pull turds right out of your ass with no regard for anything. If your diet is fiber-rich, this may not be as big of a problem, as solid turds can be easily disposed. However, if you're a fan of Taco Bell, be warned that splash damage is a very real thing. It's best during the anal stretching period to invest in a wide range of butt plugs. Not only will this stem the tide of fecal matter, making dramatic exits through what can only be described as an industrial laundry chute, but with the proper fitment, the plugs will maintain your latest stretch during downtime. Proper resting with a press-fit butt plug is good and allows the body to accept the new monstrosity that's the size of your a-hole. Anal fissures are a byproduct of stretching too rapidly without the necessary downtime and recovery. Anal fissures are extremely painful, especially when infected by wet bowel movements. The only benefit of anal stretching is lack of fart noise. Like a balloon stem, the known fart noise is caused by air movement vibrating the orifice it exits. Noise intensity are directly proportional to airspeed velocity, while harshness of pitch is indirectly proportional to size of hole. With an escape hatch the size of a mini-sub, airspeed velocity is virtually zero, thus no noise is heard. Any gas produced by the body and exiting the colon tends to just waft out as produced. I'm not even sure if the action of farting is a thing when your a-hole can fit a small adult inside of it. I suppose technically there is some air movement, but it would be no more significant than running a leaf blower through the Grand Canyon. Finally, it should be cautioned to never leave your expanded a-hole uncovered, as birds, fish, and reptiles will nest in the discovered cave dwellings. This then becomes a health and safety violation in many public settings that is best to generally avoid. I personally recommend having a sealed traffic cone or small inflatable raft handy when leaving your a-hole alone for more than 5 minutes. Butt plugs are an option, but only if you're staying under 24 centimeters in diameter. Greater than 24 centimeters, and the butt plug industry will have to create a custom-sized plug, which is costly and generally best to avoid. So, in conclusion, when going to the extremes of anal stretching, keep realistic goals, but always prepare ahead of time for a size you may think unattainable. Your anus will surprise you. You know what? No, we're not going to comment on that. Story 30. This is probably going to get buried, but here goes. This one time in college, I was working with a group on a pretty tough problem set. We weren't really making any progress, so we looked online for some help. Every site that had the answers gave us the first page, but then we would need to pay for the rest. Of course, we didn't want to. Then we found one site that had all the pages, but they were blurred. Most other sites only showed the first page. The later pages looked like if you were looking at something with a magnifying glass out of focus. So I jokingly said, "What if we put my glasses up to bring it back into focus?" Then we tried it and it actually worked. I couldn't believe it. Story 31. When I was around 17, this Kroger by my house has these 6-packs of root beer bottles. One night, I had an idea to switch out the bottles of root beer with bottles of actual beer and go through the self-checkout. I compared beer bottles to find the kind closest to the root beer bottles in color and shape, and for the brand name to be lower than the sides of the 6-pack container, so you couldn't see it, and with no second label near the mouth of the bottle. Finally got it all together and went to the self-checkout. As I scanned it, I was pretty nervous, but ended up not having any problems. Scanned, paid, left. I felt like a genius. Plus, since it was root beer, it was a third the price of the 6-pack of beer. And that's when I peaked in life. So self-checkout at Kroger, man, it is so easy to pull these kinds of shenanigans. I mean, I myself am guilty. I have an affinity for Honeycrisp apples, which are by far and away the most expensive apples that you can buy in the produce section. So what I would do is when I would go to self-checkout, you have to put your bag of apples on the scale, it'll weigh it and then charge you. I would always say that they were Fuji apples, which is by far and away the cheapest apple that you get at the grocery store. So I would basically end up loading up on Honeycrisp apples for the price of Fuji, which total, I paid about half value. So yeah, Kroger, people are taking advantage of you in your self-checkout. Just so you know. Maybe you know and you don't care, in which case, good for you. Story 32. I love poached eggs, but sometimes I don't have the time to wait for a pot of water to boil. So what I do instead is grab a coffee mug, fill it halfway with water, and then crack the egg inside. Place the mug in the microwave and place a saucer on top. Allow it to microwave for a minute to a minute and a half, and it's almost always a perfectly poached egg. You can then use a spoon or fork to hold the egg in the mug while you dump the water out, and then pour the egg onto your plate. I saw this on Reddit a few weeks ago, and that was coincidentally the first time that I've had a poached egg. I've since made real poached eggs, and honestly, there's little difference. Story 33. This will get buried, but it's a trick that I learned from my grandma. If your batteries die in an appliance of sorts, switch them around. In other words, if battery A positive pole is touching the contact and battery B's negative pole is touching the contact, they're in series, one on top of the other, flip the batteries so that battery A is on the other side with its negative pole touching the contact, and battery B is where battery A used to be with its positive pole is touching the contact. You will squeeze some extra juice out of the battery. I'm not sure exactly why this works, but it does. It can be very helpful when you're desperate and your batteries are dead. Yeah, I'm just going to replace the batteries. Sorry. Moving on. Story 34. Hard water spots / lime scale everywhere on and around my kitchen sink. I oversprayed a 50-50 mix of rubbing alcohol and vinegar on it accidentally and found when wiping that it cleaned better than anything that I've ever spent all that money on. Ever. I still can't get over it. I've bought every noxious chemical on the market to clean this stuff, and a blend of cheap household chemicals that I was using on a plant that was infested with bugs turns out to be the best and cheapest cleanser that I could have ever bought. It works great in the bathroom, too. Story 35. When I was in college, my cafeteria would always close at 7 every night. Crazy, I know. As a lazy college student with no car, I frequently missed the cafeteria's open hours at night, so I resorted to DoorDash and pizza delivery to sustain me until the next day. I also didn't have a lot of money, so I'd sometimes go hungry rather than spend the $12 to get some small meal delivered. Thanks, DoorDash. One day, when ordering pizza from Papa John's, I looked up specials and codes to try to lessen the hit on my debit card. I tried them, and as usual, they all didn't work. Except for one. It's a code I still remember to this day. MLM50. My days of starving were over. 50% off your whole order, and it could be combined with other offers? I think I got pizzas delivered for $6 the whole time I was in college. The delivery drivers and I were on first name basis. And while they thought I was a man with immense riches, I was but a con man. A legal, money-saving con man. It felt like robbery. So if any of you poor souls reading this are starving in Nashville, try this code. May my prior fortunes aid your stomachs in future sustenance. TLDR, I was starving in college until a 50% off coupon made me a god. Story 36. No one will believe this, but here goes. Grandpa taught me this trick. Have someone sit in a chair. 4 people make an X with their index fingers of both hands. Put one X under each armpit and knee. This is to show that you cannot raise the person that way. Now the trick. One person places the left hand on the seated person's head. Each other person places their left hand in a stack on top of the first hand. Then do the same thing with the right hand, in the same order. Person whose hand is on top takes his hand off. When you feel the hand above yours come off, take your hand off. When all hands are off, make the X and lift the person off the chair in the same way you tried before. Now they're easy to lift. Grandpa said he tried it with 3 fellow workers who were trying to put a transformer into a truck, and they almost threw the transformer, it raised so easily. I have no explanation, but I've seen it work countless times. Story 37. Staring at someone with a blank expression and saying nothing is the strongest psychological warfare tactic known to man. There's nothing you can say that will make a person feel fear. I don't care how smart you think you are, there's nothing clever or witty that will make an angry person back off. You're just a barking chihuahua. But when someone is barking at you, just lock eyes and say nothing. You can blink, but don't divert your gaze to anyone else. And for the love of God, make sure your mouth is closed, you ape. Oh, and no flinching. On the rare occasion they don't freak out and back off, be prepared to throw down the instant they twitch. They're not going to hit you. The only defense they have against a dead stare is to break your confidence, and flinching makes you look scared. When you're staring at them, the only thing on your mind is preparing yourself to actually punch, not flinch, when they twitch at you. But 90% of the time, it works 100% of the time. You're never going to have to punch. You just have to know that you will. Story 38. Christmas, my missus got me a meat thermometer, and I tried reverse searing a beef roast. Basically, you cook it on very low for a long time, until the internal temperature reaches 52 to 57 degrees Celsius. That way, the fat on the outside renders and the meat is cooked through, but it's still pink. Then you quickly sear the outside in a scorching hot pan. Bish bash bosh, you've got a perfectly pink roast all the way through, and you've got a tasty caramelized crust. This is called reverse searing because typically you'd sear the meat, then put it in the oven to cook through. But if you want the roast medium rare, often this means that there's a significant gradation from very done on the outside to rare in the middle. With reverse searing, you don't get that. First time I tried it, I was like, holy crap. Story 39. If you ever have hiccups that won't subside despite all your efforts, try this. You'll need an extra person to help. Fill a glass with lukewarm water. It has to be lukewarm, not too hot. Have the person stand behind you and cover your ears. While they're covering your ears, slowly drink the lukewarm water. This will cure your hiccups, guaranteed. I work in an emergency department alongside physicians, and one day this guy came in who had hiccups for 2 days straight. He tried every home remedy, but nothing helped, so he came to the ER. Went in with the doc, who said he had a little African voodoo to show me. He's from Ghana and says things like that all the time when he has something neat to show me. When he explained the process, I thought it was silly and was like, yeah, right. And then he held the patient's ears while he drank the water, and boom! Just like that, dude stopped hiccuping. My jaw dropped, to say the least, and the patient and his wife couldn't believe it either. It was something he had learned in Philly, where he first started practicing as an ER doc, and it's something I'll never forget. Story 40. Here's a 2-piece for y'all. For hiccups, hold your breath, completely, no cheating, and swallow 3 or 4 times. Gone. If not, do it again while pinching your nose shut. As for earache, please don't think this will cure a serious infection. See a doctor. Lie down on one side and pour about a half a capful of hydrogen peroxide in the affected ear. You can do this while watching TV, listening to music, etc. on your couch or bed, or even just the floor. I recommend placing a towel under you in case the peroxide drips. Be aware that this can bleach out the towel, so either go with a white one or use a towel you don't mind getting spotted. Also, be aware that if this gets in your hair, it can have the same effect, so be careful there. You may want to rinse the area with water afterwards. If the peroxide runs, just make sure you're not going to wake up later with a big blonde patch on the side of your head. Anyway, just leave it until the bubbling subsides to a soft rustle, then pour it out onto a towel or a tissue, etc. One last thing, if you leave peroxide in your ear too long, like 20 minutes or more, it could potentially burn your skin. Works to clear up even bad earaches, 90% of the time. Story 41. Back when Pokemon Sun first released, people were trying to figure out where to catch a sea urchin. My brother, who wanted it, looked it up online, and people were claiming if you damage X a lot but don't faint it, then it could spawn Y. There was very little coverage over the game because how early we got it, and I instantly called BS to that because I fell for dumbass cheats like that back in the day. Y'all remember those infamous cheats? Like, if you beat Smash Bros. With every character 10 times, you unlock Sonic? That's exactly what I wanted my brother to avoid, and the in-game Pokedex listed it appearing in a specific area and told him to just grind for it there. 2 to 3 hours later, he almost gave up until he just wanted to try the trick out, and lo and behold, it worked. Thinking it was just luck, I tried it a few times and got it every time. Eventually, when people started uploading vids and whatnot, this method of catching Pokemon was actually a gimmick that was supposed to be used to catch specific Pokemon. Story 42. Tampons make for great kindling. Just open them up so they're nice and fluffy and add some hand sanitizer if you've got any, and voila! You've got pretty much the best kindling you could ever dream of. I've managed to start more than one bonfire in a storm this way. As an added bonus, because tampons come packed individually in plastic, they will always stay dry no matter what. Also, hand sanitizer, or at least Dax Alcohol 85, works great for cleaning wounds. Hurts like a mother though. This has been things I never thought I would learn from the Army. So I had to learn this from personal experience. It was totally involuntary, but tampons are also obviously very good for absorbing the blood from like open wounds. There was this one time I got hit in the eye with a baseball. I'm going to spare you guys the backstory of how that happened. But anyway, my face was busted open. I was pouring blood, black eye. And before I knew it, I had like 3 women over my like semi-conscious body, like shoving tampons onto my face. And within just a couple of minutes, like all the blood that was coming off my face had been totally dried up. And then, they were able to clean up the wound and get me back on my feet. But that was funny, but also pretty incredible. Obviously, that's not the main use of tampons, but they are meant to just destroy blood in a 1v1 battle. And they did. Story 43. Insect repellent will remove a lot of the yellow tint to your headlights and make them brighter, and it makes your car look much better in about 30 seconds. It isn't as good as the sand and polish restoration kits, but it's super quick and worth it. The more damaged your headlights are, the less it will work, obviously. In my experience, the brand Off doesn't work as well as Repel. I get the Max stuff. You just give one headlight a good coat, and while that's soaking in, coat the other headlight. Then go back to the first and wipe it clean. Wipe the other one clean and you're done. Sometimes if you do it again, you can get a little bit more off. Story 44. Unpasteurized local honey for seasonal allergies. My birch pollen, spring, allergies are beyond horrible and meds do not help. When I take the honey diligently and start early enough, mid to late winter, my symptoms are non-existent. You start by taking 1 teaspoon of honey 2 to 3 times daily for about 8 weeks before first pollen exposure. I'm not sure of the exact mechanism, but it somehow desensitizes the immune system, similar to allergy shots. The only downside is that if you start too late or get exposed to pollen before you have a good 2 months in, say due to travel, it doesn't work. Use raw honey from a farm in your climate zone. I'm sure there's individual variation, but it works like a charm for me. Story 45. One time I burned my fingers with a curling iron. My boyfriend's parents were raised in Colombia. I had a bottle of water that was completely frozen, and we had just come back from CVS with the cream when his dad told me, "No, use egg whites." I just kind of shook my head like, no thanks. But he kept insisting, so I was like, whatever, sure. So he made me a small bowl and told me to keep putting more on it every time it dries, and to do it for an hour. So first things first, when I put it on initially, it cooled the burn and I felt immediate relief. So I kept reapplying it more often than when it just dried out. Every time I felt the burn come back, I put more on. After half an hour, the pain started dwindling down. After an hour, I had no more pain at all. The next day, I literally did not even have a single mark on either of my fingers, when I know it should have been a huge blister. So that's my favorite trick. Lots of people keep trying to tell me that it's super unhealthy and dangerous to put raw egg whites on a burn, but to be honest, I'll take that 1 in a million chance any day over getting a blister from a bad burn. It's not an open cut, so I think my chances are pretty good. Regardless, it worked. It shook me to my core, and I'm going to keep using this trick. Story 46. My external hard drive was accidentally unplugged while transferring data a while back, and it almost never worked after that. Once in a while, I could get through to the files, but most of the time it would click and my computer wouldn't be able to open it, or it would just crash Windows altogether. But my friend comes along one day and asks me if I've ever tried percussive maintenance. She asks if she can try, and I say yes, and she just starts punching it. It works fine now. She actually took it with her to acquire some Game of Thrones. It started clicking one more time recently. Percussive maintenance worked again. Story 47. I can think of two. 1. An awesome cure for heartburn is a spoonful of yellow mustard, like the kind you would dress a hot dog with. I didn't believe it until I couldn't take it anymore and tried it. Right after you swallow, you get that awful sensation that makes you want to murder the person that told you to try it, but give it a minute. You'll see. 2. Pickle juice. Feel like crap? Hungover like a mother effer? Charlie horse? Drink a few shots of pickle juice, and you'll thank me later. You're welcome. So I almost mentioned this before, but now that it's actually been brought up, I would also like to verify pickle juice also helps to cure hiccups as well. So I think someone provided a solution earlier that required 2 people. If you're flying solo, just take a couple sips of pickle juice, kind of let it ferment in your mouth, like a fine wine, and then just go ahead and gulp it down, and those hiccups will cease to exist. It's science. Story 48. Was a big naysayer to pot. Tried it for the first time at 16 for broken wrist pain, and it worked. Didn't even make me hungry. Then at 21, had mild psychosis. Tried LSD, and my world was opened up. Recently, I lost my job and home to minor misplacement of funds for medication, and tried crack cocaine. My sleep addiction is cured. Plus, I don't have to eat anymore. What a waste of money food is. Anyway, moral of the story is spending $200 to $300 a month to my neighbor's uncle's cousin has saved me time and effort. Do drugs, kids. Do all the drugs. Well, I gotta go. The spiders are back. Story 49. Oh, story time. I got a free 2K fridge that was 2 years old from a friend's neighbor. The water stopped working and they just bought another one. It was on their porch for a week during summer before he gave it to me. Realized when I got home and opened it, an exploded ice cream container was in the freezer drawer. It was the nastiest crap I smelled. Well, F it, I could clean and get the smell out of the fridge and still make my wife happy with this super nice fridge. Clean it out and the smell just wouldn't go away. Tried everything the internet told me. Vinegar, baking soda, bleach, coffee grounds, etc. Nothing worked. 2 weeks of me trying something new every day. I'm obsessed at this point. A friend comes over to visit the kids. I tell her about my fridge problem. She tells me to put charcoal in the fridge and plug it in. It should clear out in a day or 2. I don't believe her, but I probably sunk 10 hours trying to get this smell out. F it. I grab a bag of charcoal for the barbecue and put half the bag in the fridge. Sure as crap, smell was completely gone in 24 hours. And the water not working was literally a $45 water filter. Story 50. I was a poor college student driving a car older than myself. One day, after a long day of class and work, I tried to turn on my car and it wouldn't start. So I had somebody pick me up and drop me off at home. My car was displaying a message. So I looked it up and it turns out the car thought I was trying to steal it. The car thought this because the key had a small chip on it that needed to match the resistance of some wire when I turned the key. What did I do? I was working on finishing my degree in physics, so I thought resistance. Okay, I got this. I got a multimeter, figured out which wire I needed to match, and measured the resistance of it 10 times and got an average value. Then I got my key and measured the resistance of it 10 times and got the average value. I then went to Radio Shack, they still existed, and bought some $5 resistors assorted pack. Then I went back to my car and soldered them on the wire to match the resistance within a margin 2% error. Did my final measurement and turned the key. It worked! Holy crap! Story 51. Fuller's Earth Powder to get oil and grease stains out of fabrics. It's worked like magic on both cotton tees and wool suits. I had a 10-year-old stain on a cotton shirt. It had been washed and dried many times and also dry cleaned. Stain still there. Sprinkled on some FE powder. Rubbed it in with my fingers and brushed it off the next day. Stain gone. It's a total game changer. Story 52. Use a bidet to help with impartial bowel movements. Simply push as the stream goes right up your anus and builds a slightly uncomfortable pressure. The built-up pressure will help remove any remaining fecal that might have been stuck. Your bowel movements will be much more satisfying. Oh, and as mentioned, using a stool or squatty potty does indeed help. Or if you're small enough like me, bring your knees to your chest while on the throne for a smoother colon tract. You need to remove your lower clothes for this, but it can be really helpful sometimes. Story 53. If you have tinnitus, place the palms of your hands over your ears with fingers resting gently on the back of your head. Your middle fingers should point toward one another just above the base of your skull. Place your index fingers on top of your middle fingers and snap them, the index fingers, onto the skull, making a loud drumming noise. Repeat 40 to 50 times. Some people experience immediate relief with this method. Repeat several times a day for as long as necessary to reduce tinnitus. Courtesy of this comment I read forever ago and have done nearly every morning since I read it. I couldn't believe how silent it truly made things, something I hadn't experienced in years. Story 54. OxyClean on red wine stains for blood. My mom was staying with us and accidentally stubbed her toe. She walked around getting blood on our apartment carpet. Of course, as renters, we freaked out. Had OxyClean because this was at the height of the Billy Mays shouting infomercial time. I made a solution and was dumbfounded that the bloodstains basically faded to brown and disappeared and just needed to be soaked up with a towel. Same with red wine. I spilled some on a friend's beige carpet and we made the OxyClean solution. This time, my mind was blown. It faded to a purple color. Story 55. Don't know if it's car make specific, but with Vohal/Opals, if you hold down the open locks button on the fob for a few seconds, it opens all the windows. Really handy in summer when you go to your car. You can do this to let the heat out instead of being roasted alive by the heat that's built up over a few hours when you get in a car. Just hold the button for a few seconds, windows open, and by the time you get to your car, it's much cooler and not resembling an oven, lol. Story 56. My mother used to have us blow out the insides of eggs at Easter so that you could keep the ones you decorated. The smaller the holes you made, the better, obviously, but it was a pain. I got the idea to use an air compressor to blow out the insides of the eggs. Worked like a charm the first time and was so much faster. Second egg, being rather excited with my discovery, I forgot to break the yolk before starting. Things go fine at first, but then it stops. I notice the eggs start to look like it's sweating, then splat, egg everywhere. Turns out the yolk getting stuck and the pressure building up caused some of the egg white to actually seep through the pores of the eggshell before it blew. Was still proud of my discovery. Story 57. It's a bit obscure, but it blew my mind when it worked. For DNA extraction from filamentous fungi, I was told to scrape a little bit of the fungus off, put it in buffer, microwave it at full blast for 5 minutes, and I would have a working DNA solution. Given that DNA extraction usually requires special equipment and takes 25 to 30 minutes, I was convinced I was getting pranked, but the solution passed every test I ran. Only problem I encountered was that there was too much DNA in it, and I would have to dilute it, which meant I didn't have to do it as often. Story 58. Freezing cold water on a really irritating itch generally stops it, if only for a while. Seems like a kind of obvious one to say, but I learned this when I was a kid and couldn't make a really bad itch go away. Eventually, I just cranked up the sink's cold water and left my hand under it for a short while. Went away pretty fast. My online girlfriend, the early internet days as a teenager, mentioned she had the same problem, so I told her to do it, and lo and behold, the itch was gone. I have to assume it's a mixture of numbing the nerves and the water itself washing away whatever irritant is embedded in your skin. Hot water should work too, but it never did the trick for me. Maybe my nerves just didn't give a crap that the irritant was gone and needed to be silenced. I don't effing know. Story 59. If you spill red wine on fabric/carpet, dump salt on it immediately. Let it sit, vacuum up, good as new. Also, a personal one that will immediately give away who I am to any high school friends. So, hey guys, please don't judge my post history. If you bite the ends off a licorice whip and use it as a straw, you can make your drink as strong as you want, short of being straight liquor, and you will not taste the alcohol. Good for alcoholics, or people who aren't yet used to the taste of alcohol but want to be part of the party. Story 60. I know 4 really good ones. 1. If your job doesn't have ice but you want cold water, buy a big water bottle with a lid. Fill a quart way or halfway with water. Lay it on its side, sealed in the freezer, the night before work. This way, when you need water, you just fill up and the ice melts slowly to give you cold water through part of your day. 2. We live on the second floor of our apartment, and I usually am the one to bring home groceries. I keep a few of those big climbing gear attachments that you put on ropes on my keychain. That way, when I grab groceries to bring inside, I just attach them to 2, and I can carry 3 times as much at once without killing my fingers. 3. I love my place smelling good, and I love coffee. I buy coffee beans at the store once every 2 weeks and place tea candles inside small cups filled with different flavored coffee beans. This creates a room-filling smell of flavored coffee and is dirt cheap. Also, the beans actually last a month doing this, although I haven't done this in a while. 4. Paper cut? Heal it almost instantly and stop the pain by rubbing chapstick on it. Keeps it moist and prevents further cracking. Story 61. Not sure if this counts as a trick, but more of a pro tip. When you're getting ready to grill using charcoal and lighter fluid, let the lighter fluid soak into the charcoal for about 7 to 10 minutes and then light it. You'll get the charcoal to light correctly and have more consistent heat. I do not know how many times I see amateurs soak the charcoal with lighter fluid and then instantly light it. When you light it immediately, 2 things are going to happen. 1. You'll get a nice blowback of flames to the face. 2. You just burnt off all the lighter fluid you poured all over the charcoal and will never get your grill to heat up correctly if you keep doing this method. Story 63. How to clear a stuffy nose in under a minute. Originally posted by Troutbum in subreddit Till. Worked a treat for me today. Thought I would share it with you all. Step 1. Breathe in deeply. Step 2. Slowly exhale all of your air and hold your breath until you're on empty. Step 3. Pinch your nose to avoid cheating. Step 4. Rock your head back and forth, slowly taking 2 seconds from looking at the sky to looking at the ground. Step 5. Do it until you absolutely need a breath. Step 6. Enjoy your clear nose. Step 7. Profit. This just made life a little easier for me. Story 64. Been having some pretty severe digestion issues, mainly constipation, for a while now. Have tried all kinds of stuff from medicines to CBD pills to significantly focusing on a healthier diet, which should be done anyway. Well, this weekend I finally decided to try prunes and yogurt. 2 things I've never enjoyed. Within 2 days of eating a few prunes a day and a single serving of yogurt, one of the $1 Chobani bowls / containers, I'm completely back to regular. The yogurt initially caused some pretty extreme bloating, but that's gone down a lot, and I just can't believe how much these have helped. I don't know if it's either the prunes or the yogurt or maybe both, but I'm never looking back now. Story 65. I created my own this past year. Every time I start to feel sick, I drink 2 full pots of tea, except instead of tea, I slice up ginger and shake in a handful of red pepper flakes. It's spicy and doesn't taste that good, but it has worked every time I've done it within the first 24 hours of feeling sick. Sore throat, lethargy, body aches, etc. For anyone wanting to try it, it's a 24-ounce teapot, so 48 ounces total. I once tried with only 1 pot and still got sick. As well, I once waited till the day after I started feeling sick, and by that time, 2 pots was not enough. I've used this 6 times so far with success every time, as long as it's a full 48 ounces and within the 24-hour window. I'm going to test next time to see if a pot and a half works, because honestly, drinking spicy water is not enjoyable in any way. Story 66. There's a brand of computer cleaner, the kind to remove dirt in between your keys, I think, that you can use to remove warts and skin tags. Since I was a kid, I would get tiny warts on my fingers. Compound W often didn't work. I got sick of having to pay to get them removed. My insurance doesn't cover them since it wasn't medically necessary to remove them. So I saw the cleaning spray trick. I had to do it daily and consistently, but eventually I got rid of the warts. Someone on Amazon mentioned that they do it near their eyes. Yeah, I know. And that they then get thread and remove it. Also, using a VPN abroad. I wanted to access American TV stations, my Netflix queue, and my Hulu queue. I bought a 1-month subscription to ExpressVPN and was able to access everything. Story 67. My TV stopped working after 5 years. All the HDMI and USB ports didn't work anymore, so all you could do was watching regular TV and nothing else. I mainly use the TV with Apple TV, Chromecast, or consoles, so this was a big problem. I looked online for a possible solution, and someone suggested that I needed to cook the motherboard for a few minutes in the oven. I didn't want to buy a new TV or have a professional take a look at it, so I decided to give it a try. I followed the instructions, managed to remove the motherboard and place it in the oven for 10 minutes. Low temperature if I remember correctly. It worked! 2 years later, all the HDMI ports are still working great. Yeah, don't do this. Moving on. Story 68. I had a cell phone with the liquid damage indicator, henceforth known as LDI, that got slightly pink on a corner from me changing the battery with damp hands. Cell phone store refused to let me do a jump upgrade because of that. I did some Google foo and saw a suggestion to use a dab of bleach on a Q-tip to undo the LDI. I happen to have an old phone that was long outdated, T-Mobile G1 from 2009, with an intact LDI, so naturally I tested it. Wouldn't you know it, the damn method worked. When I did it on my G4 and it went right back to normal, I was so giddy that I picked up one of my dogs and started jumping around. And since he saw how happy I was, he started jumping around celebrating with me. Story 69. I'll start with saying that I'm the most irresponsible, lazy, unproductive, and disorganized person I know. That said, write down your goals. Figure out concrete things that you can do that will help you towards that goal. Make plans for the week, month, and year. Actually, put them on a schedule. Try not to get too rigid about, but definitely put them down and follow them to the best of your ability. You don't want to subject yourself to a tyrannical schedule. Give yourself time to relax. You'll find out how much time you need and adjust it over time. Plain old Google Calendar is great for this. You can put repeating blocks of time down for routine things, along with task reminders for various chores and to-do items. And you can easily see what time you have to play with and optimize your own personal strategy. Review this plan weekly. Pick a day each week to review how the last week went, what you can do to be just a little bit better, and plan the next week. I'm not at all a list or schedule type of person. In fact, it conflicts against my deepest nature, but it's highly effective and easy to do. I'm not at all one for routine, but it has drastically improved my productivity and even my mood. I no longer worry about missing something because it's on the schedule. I don't feel guilty about not doing something because I'm doing so much more than I would naturally. And if I do slip up, I know I tried my best and I should just see that I can tweak and try again. I have a very good idea of exactly how much recreation/sleep I need. I know what happens if I don't get it because I've played around with more or less until I found what works for me. The planning/scheduling, along with building up an emergency fund, has relieved easily 80% of my day-to-day stress. I didn't even realize how stressed I was before this. It was just normal. Story 70. If you like Thai food and cooking, take some Thai chilies or a big jalapeno and 2 cloves of garlic. Motor and pestle them together and put it in a small dish. Add 2 tablespoons of fish sauce and taste. Pretty salty, right? Add 2 tablespoons of lime juice and taste. Balances pretty well. Adjust fish sauce or lime juice until you taste both of them at the same time, as opposed to one before the other. Add a half tablespoon of sugar, mix well, and taste. Changes the whole thing completely. Add another half tablespoon of sugar and taste again. Changes completely again. Repeat until you suddenly achieve this magical, balanced, and delicious sauce, and put that crap on just about everything. Story 71. Avoid those awkward walking near-miss shuffling episodes by simply looking at the ground where you're going. People are generally very good at reading body language and figuring out where you're headed. It's when you both look at one another, then look left and right and change your gait/direction 3 or 4 times that it gets confusing. I don't mean just cut everyone off and act like you're the only person on the sidewalk. Simply telegraph where you're planning to go by looking there, and people will figure out the rest. It's best for both of you. This has made navigating busy sidewalks or any crowded location a breeze, and I can't recommend it enough. So I was always taught to just veer right in situations like this, but obviously people don't do that, and then you end up doing the little Texas two-step, shuffling back and forth and going around each other. So yeah, maybe I'll give this a try, because simply going right, for whatever reason, not everyone does that, even though that's the easiest way to avoid head-on collisions with other people. Story 72. If someone has hiccups, you can tell them you have the best method to get rid of hiccups. Once you have their attention, you just keep building up how good your secret trick is to get rid of hiccups. Keep building up the tension with statements like, "Are you ready for this?" or "This is totally going to blow your mind." Stall for as long as possible by continually teasing your amazing hiccup curing technique. By the time you're ready to reveal your method, if you stalled long enough, the hiccups are usually gone. I've had such a high rate of success with this that I was surprised how well it worked. Story 73. Ask enough idiots and one of them will say yes. I was selling phone book advertising. Yes, I know, it's a dead medium. We needed to sell the front cover. Front cover was about $6,000 a month. Do you know what you can do for $6,000 a month in advertising? A hell of a lot more than a phone book. Anyway, my boss taught me this pitch and told me to go to every business and pitch it. I counted. I went to 79 businesses, the 80th business bought. Holy F. Ask enough and eventually you'll find someone to say yes. Story 74. Sleep paralysis sufferers. When you realize you're experiencing it, relax everything. Close your eyes and go back to sleep. You'll wake up again properly in a few moments. It's absolute magic. I get sleep paralysis in various forms. Sometimes the traditional one of being able to see but not move, or sometimes it will be a looping dream with limited movement. Every time, as soon as I realize, just relax and close my eyes. 100% successful. Story 75. This isn't really a homegrown tip, it's more of a product, but Brillo pads. Holy crap, I didn't know about them until I was 24 and my husband's friend told me about them. I had this cast iron grill pan that I could never get 100% clean. Like, the burnt on crap would just not come off. Well, about 10 minutes and 2 Brillo pads later, it was like a brand new pan. It blew my mind how well it worked, and particularly how quickly it worked. I didn't even soak the pan first. I just wet the pad and set to work. They've completely revolutionized my cleaning game. Story 76. So this was probably only a one-time thing, but here goes. I was driving with my girlfriend and we were at a stoplight. I felt my brake lock, and when the light turned green, I pressed down on the accelerator. That locked too. I looked down at my dashboard, and I'm not exaggerating when I say every light was on. I used what little momentum I had, I was on an incline, and turned to the side of the road. I put my car in park and looked at my girlfriend. This probably isn't going to work, I said, as I turned my car off and subsequently turned it back on. It worked fine. No lights, and my car moved perfectly. I obviously took it into the shop a little under a week later, but it was a really funny, have you tried turning it off and turning it back on moment that actually worked. Story 77. I have a few that I'd like to share because I'm bored. Wasabi is a spicy thing for sushi that makes your head feel like it's going to explode if you have too much. While eating it, breathe in extremely deep while chewing and exhale sorta quick. Then repeat while eating and you'll just have a tingle tongue. I've never had that head exploding feeling while eating wasabi with sushi after I figured this out. Mind over matter pain tricks. Extreme pain I can't deal with, but one step below that, if you pretend with every strong breath that you exhale, you're pushing out a part of that pain with your breath, you can eventually ease the pain to a more manageable level. Holding your breath to stop hiccups. I never have hiccups for more than a few seconds because once I have just one, I hold my breath for as long as physically possible and they go away. Story 78. At any given point, you have one nostril that's noticeably more open than the other. This can indicate which hemisphere of your brain is more activated. If your left nostril is more open, then your right brain is more active and vice versa. You can actually control this through breathing exercises where you close one nostril completely. Do set a number of inhale/exhales and then alternate nostrils, always doing more reps through the nostril you want opened. This will in turn cause one side of your brain to be more active. If you need to work on a task that's more analytical, open your right nostril to activate your left brain. If you're focusing on being more creative, then open your left nostril. Story 79. Use a smoke machine to find leaks in your HVAC system. There is some prep. Cover or remove all smoke detectors, and don't burn your house down. Cover all registers with painter's tape. Have access to wherever you think the leak is, such as your attic. Have a friend help. Use a phone to communicate. Remove the filter from the return. When you're ready, with your HVAC blower on, have them turn it on for a few seconds, blowing it into the return duct nearest the air handler. Anywhere there's a leak, voila! Working with air and electricity are my two most hated jobs. Invisible stuff means you have to be really good at troubleshooting. Story 80. Treating girls nice in private but mean in public makes them want to sleep with you. You can't be outright mean. There has to be a joking aspect to it. But yeah, overall, I would treat them poorly in front of people. Worked through college and afterwards into my 20s until I realized I was a scumbag drug addict. Got sober, didn't have sex for 3 years, and am now a decent human being. The urges to do this still come around sometimes. It really did work way too well. There's gotta be some sort of underlying reason that someone much smarter than me could probably explain why this happens. Story 81. I work on MEMS R&D, and for some gyroscope applications to work, you have to constantly be measuring the rotation of the Earth and back out of the data to get an accurate reading from the sensor. So in one of our labs, we have some crappy old turntable set up, spinning super sensitive gyros around. which are constantly displaying the rate of rotation of the planet Earth at that exact moment. It just blows my mind every time I look at it. Story 82. Doing it properly the first time actually saves time and money. I do programming work. Taking too many bad practice shortcuts tends to cause time-wasting problems and hard-to-fix bugs down the line. If I take more time doing it correct, I save time overall from fixing broken builds. By the same token, don't overcomplicate things. If equally effective, simple and straightforward is best. There is such a thing as over-engineering and unnecessary features. Just look at infomercial products. Oh, last trick. Take Metamucil. Just do it. Best craps ever, even if you're perfectly healthy. Unless you can do number 2 and only need to wipe once or twice with a single sheet, you need fiber. Story 83. For people with a stuffed nose, decongestant spray. People talk about all these silly and extremely temporary ways to unblock your nose, but as a hay fever sufferer, decongestant spray has made it 10 times easier to deal with. Get a proper one with XH on it, not hard to find. Then clear your nose as best you can. Spray it up while closing your other nostril with your finger and breathe in. Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, but trust me on this. If you don't feel liquid go up, it didn't work. Do it again. Repeat for your other nostril. Give it 15 minutes and your nose will be 100% unblocked. Literally, 100%. You'll be able to breathe better than you normally can. Should last around 4 to 8 hours. Caution, using for longer than a week or so, your nose may become reliant on it. You can wean off one nostril at a time if this happens. Story 84. When making out with a girl for the first time, I will guide her hand with my hand to my chicken. I change her reaction, then whip it out slowly. I keep making out with her. I've even whispered to her either touch it or kiss it. Either way, at that point I know it's going to work. I slightly exaggerate how good the touching feels, and if she's already kissing it, then it really does feel that good. Then it's BJ City. I make sure to moan extra to make her get really into it and to make her feel like some pleasure goddess. Then she just goes harder. She swallows, it's the effing best. First few times I did it, I was amazed at how well it worked. I'm talking like an 80% success rate. Yeah, so let's just take a minute to shout out this dude. This is like the coolest guy to ever grace the face of the earth, man. So cool. Let's like serenade him and sing his praises. Man, I wish I could be as awesome as you are. JK, LOL. Story 85. To clean the grout in your bathtub, get some bleach and a length of cotton coil. Dip the cotton in the bleach and gently squeeze out any excess back into the bottle. Lay the cotton on the grout and attempt to avoid placing it directly on the porcelain. After 10 to 20 minutes or so, check to see if the grout is clean. Of course, be sure to use protection when handling the bleach. It might not hurt when you're touching it, but it can damage your skin in the long run. Run the vent and open a window if you can to let the fumes out so you don't harm your lungs by inhaling the poison. Dispose of the used cotton properly or even reuse it in your toilet to remove tough stains. Story 87. I'm probably too late for this post, but throwing a cup full of rubbing/isopropyl alcohol at a wasp nest, or most any other cluster of insects, will instantly kill everything inside and immediately around it. I was super skeptical when my grandfather told me about this, but one day I opened the door to a car that had been sitting there for months and found a large wasp nest inside the door hinge, so I decided to test it. I got a wide plastic cup, filled it with about a cup of alcohol, splashed it at the nest, and ran like hell. When I stopped running and turned to look, I couldn't see anything flying around the car, so I cautiously approached and found a large pile of dead wasps on the ground directly beneath the nest. It works because alcohol evaporates so ridiculously fast, it instantly freezes the insect to death, since evaporation has a cooling effect. Story 88. So IDK if it works with anybody else, but you know those videos on Facebook that they'll automatically scroll to another video? Most of the time it's the same topics. Once after one is done? Well, you know how they have ads right in the middle of the video? Right when the video goes dark, after it gets to 1 in the countdown, and before it actually plays the ad, if you click the comments, the ad will play and you can read the comments while you wait. It's kind of a 2 birds, 1 stone. You get to see the first few comments and see if it's something you want to scroll through, and the ad doesn't seem as long and annoying. Story 89. Buck your belts, it's quite a long one here. So I was working at a convenience store this summer. My first job, I'm a youngster, and on the cash register, they blocked every shortcut to everything. Document, internet, app, and stuff. And one day, I just wanted to charge my phone, so I plugged it in the computer. A small window appeared and said, Do you want to use Document to open these files? Open Document and dug up a bit. Found some things like documentation about the company. I didn't really look into it. But most importantly, I found a shortcut to Internet Explorer. Did some tests with it and it worked. So when we had no customers, I would just chat on Discord or watch some video. After I left the job for school, I told it to the manager and also told her to watch out for this because some information could be made public because of that. Story 90. I have tinnitus, but I learned a trick to temporarily stop the ringing. I use it whenever the ringing gets really bad and it's never not worked for me. I didn't think it'd work until I tried it. Basically, what you do is put the palm of your hand around the ear the ringing is coming from. The next part is trickier to explain, but on the nape of your neck, place your middle finger with your index finger on top of it. Then flick your index finger down to your neck. I don't know the science behind it, but it always makes the ringing go away. I've showed other people how to do it and it's worked for them. I can explain it further if need be. Story 91. The graphics card on my 2009 iMac went kaput a couple years back. I took the iMac to a repair center who said it was too old to fix. They couldn't get new parts. Took the machine back home, tried searching for a new graphics card on eBay, but if I recall correctly, that would cost a couple $100. Then I searched YouTube if there is a fix, because YouTube has a tutorial for about everything, right? And I found an overly long video where a guy with broken English said you had to cook the graphics card in the oven, 200 degrees Celsius, for 8 minutes. I had nothing to lose, so I did it and it has worked ever since. No idea how long it'll last, but so far, so good. So I said it before, the last time someone posted, I'm going to say it again. Do not put electronics in the oven for any amount of time and at any temperature. Story 92. If you plan on doing heavy drinking, buy a bottle of Pedialyte. It's that juice for toddlers, I know, but it clears hangovers better than anything else I've ever encountered. It hydrates your brain surprisingly fast. Gatorade has a whole bunch of sugar in it which dehydrates you, whereas Pedialyte doesn't. Anecdotal evidence? My friend and I have been to multiple outdoor music festivals. Sometimes things get the better of us, from sun and heat to drinking to other activities. Wake up, chug a bottle of Pedialyte, nap for 30 to 45 minutes, wake up like nothing happened. Story 93. I'm an excited soda drinker who frequently suffers from hiccups when I consume bubbly drinks. My sister had me lift my arms above my head while feeding me a full glass of water. I really thought she was trying to be funny and make me look like an idiot, but it really worked and that's been my go-to since. Only downside is it takes 2 people. I've tried it on my own by lifting one arm up and the other awkwardly positioning my elbow above my head and trying to drink from the glass with some pretty good results, like 70% success rate when self-administered. Story 94. If you're confident in yourself and look like you belong, you'd be surprised at the places you can get into. Comic-Con public bathrooms are where horror movies take a crap. Most, if not all, hotels in the area are closed to the general public without a pass. If you need to go to the bathroom and don't want to join the line of E. coli, start small talk with people entering fancy hotels. The staff won't know the difference. Ask the people you walk in with where the bathrooms are. Don't ask the staff. In the end, you get a nice air-conditioned stall with toilet paper and no line. Friends and I also got into a theater with expired tickets we found. Went in during a mass rush. I think it was Black Panther we saw. Story 95. About 10 or so years ago, for a while, HP sold a lot of laptops with the same, I believe, 3Com wireless card in each laptop. 3 months into owning these laptops, the wireless card died and most people never bought the extended warranty, and each local shop could not figure out how to get them to work again. The hardware just disappeared. Would not show up in any hardware test. For all logical reasons, it just died. But it had a physical indicator that it still worked, but the HP laptops would not pick it up. I was working with a guy out of this shop doing computer repair, and we had 6 of these laptops in, so he had me work on one. And after trying for hours and reading forums on it, we got nowhere and we were going to call it a night, and then I decided, well, they're all the same hardware, why not swap one onto the other? And it worked. The wireless cards loaded, installed as new hardware using the same built-in driver and never once crashed again, as far as I can tell. Logically, it did not make any sense, but after that, we were known as the shop that could fix these HP laptops for people, so we had a lot coming in, and we would do it for a nominal fee and get back to them the next day since we had so many we were working on. I had a similar vintage HP laptop with the same card, so I was set and would just swap them out. We told them if they had issues with it to bring it back. We guaranteed our work and no one ever brought them back for that issue. It's a small enough town that I would run into people who came in for the fix, and even a year later down the road, etc., they all still worked. Some died though, because Nvidia cards would overheat and end itself, but not the wireless cards. Story 96. If your heart rate is too high for comfort or just generally out of control, lay down and tighten your sphincter, as if you're trying to keep in diarrhea on the way to a bathroom. I had SVT, which caused a resting heart rate of 208, and the ER doctors told me to do this, and it works very well. I also have diabetes, and when I exercise, I can get dizzy when my heart rate goes way up from exercise, but this move helps me calm down and keep going, instead of giving up and laying down. Of course, if your heart rate is uncomfortable for any reason, you should get medical help immediately. Don't take any chances with your heart. SVT almost killed me twice because I didn't think anything was really worth going to the ER, but I did anyway. I'm grateful to be alive. Story 97. Okay, something that has always amazed me is the lighter trick for the Wii. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'll try my best to explain. If you have a Wii, the original, but for whatever reason can't connect the wired infrared sensor bar, the thing that receives the signal for your remote, then you can actually sort of control the on-screen mouse by pointing the controller through a lighter. I found out about it when my friend was using his Wii at his apartment to watch something a few years ago. For whatever reason, he had stored it poorly and the sensor bar broke. Since we weren't playing video games or anything, he put a candle in front of his TV and it worked. I was like 25-ish at the time, and I know a bit about IT tech, so it blew my flipping mind. That's before I learned that the sensor bar doesn't actually receive a signal, but instead transmit a continuous infrared signal. Story 98. To kill and dispose of a stink bug without having to smell it, tear off some duct tape, about 3 to 4 inches. Hold it sticky side out and put it down on top of the stink bug. Pick up tape and bug should come with it. Quickly, before it has time to spray, fold up the rest of the strip of tape over the bug. Then fold down the edges, etc. Irritating little shield-shaped bug in a handy package which you can throw in the trash without the trash getting stink bug funk either. I'd usually feel bad about possibly being cruel to the bug, but stink bugs are such little craps. Story 99. I figured out how to stop my hiccups when I was a kid. It's like this whole ritual. First, I force myself to burp to get out any buildup of gas in my stomach. Then I take a very slow deep breath, very controlled in and out, and slow and breathing in as much as I can, and exhaling as far as I can. Then I hold my breath for a little bit. Take a few more deep breaths and hold my breath again. All the while, I'm putting all my concentration on my diaphragm. Just focus on breathing through my diaphragm. I continue the cycle of breathing deeply and holding my breath until I feel it's been long enough to know I should have had another hiccup by now. Then I stop and breathe normally and see if they're gone. If they aren't, I try again. It pretty much always works eventually. I like to think of it as stopping my hiccups through deep focus. Story 100. I had the hiccups at a work function and my boss said, "I'll give you $5 if you keep hiccuping after this bet." I had to give him $5 if I was still hiccuping, but the incentive was for me to stop hiccuping, and I was skeptical that the bet would cure me. Lo and behold, I had no more hiccups and had to give him $5. He said he's never lost a bet, so I'm guessing your mind thinks about something in a way which fixes it. I don't know. Story 101. The one and only time I opened a bottle of wine by hitting it against a wall. I saw a video of someone pouring a bottle of wine in a shoe and hitting it against a wall, causing the cork to fly out. So I did what came naturally. Combine a bottle, a shoe, a wall, and the cork went flying along with a spurt of red wine on my parents' driveway. I was pumped, so I ran inside and grabbed my mom to show her this awesome new trick that would improve her life. Over and over I tried, but could not replicate this wonder. Eventually, my mom began to get bored, and that was the one and only time I opened a bottle of wine by hitting it against a wall. Story 102. This sounds very ominous and murdery, but hydrogen peroxide get blood out of literally everything I've ever tried it on. I've only ever used this trick when it's recently stained. In other words, IDK if this works on dried blood. I've also only tried this on clothes and mattresses/sheets, so I'm not sure what the texture limitations are. Anyways, I'm awful at tracking that time of the month, and literally will just effing wake up in a pool of blood sometimes. So this is helpful for that, but also because I always get nosebleeds and never notice/get to the bathroom in time. I'm also just generally clumsy and end up injuring myself in various ways nonstop and usually end up bleeding on something. TLDR, I end up with blood on my clothes a lot. Usually the steps are, 1. Try to soak up the excess blood that's kind of pooling at the top, if there is any, with a paper towel or something. Just don't press too hard because you don't want to spread it or get it soaked into the fabric even more. 2. Just get some hydrogen peroxide and squirt it on the blood spots. 3. It gets warm and fuzzy when it starts doing stuff and sucking up the blood and shite, so that's always kind of a freaky surprise. 4. You'll be able to see when the blood is gone because it will either stop fizzing or because you just see that the stain isn't there, whichever comes first. 5. If there's still some ghost stain left, either get some more hydrogen peroxide and try again, or just skip ahead to step 6. 6. Just wash as normal. 6.1. If you're like me and using it on a mattress, just let it sit and dry. Maybe use some bleach or Febreze or Resolve or something to make the weird irony/hydrogen peroxide smell go away, or, if you're fancy, use a shampoo or vacuum thing or a pet spot vacuum thingy to just make sure it's clean for sure. 7. Don't bleed on crap again. Story 103. Club soda for a stain. This particular stain was peanut butter on the living room rug. The rug has a white stripe in the middle of dark brown. Yep, the PB globbed only onto the white stripe and has been there for hours. I ran and got a bottle of club soda and some paper towels. There was a glob right in the middle of the stripe. The oily part had soaked into the carpet pretty thoroughly. After I gently scooped up the glob, whilst desperately trying to not grind it further into the carpet, I literally poured the whole 7-ounce bottle directly on the oily PB stain. I waited for a few. Gone. No trace. Story 104. Hate getting into cold showers because of the temperature difference of your warm body? Lower your head, looking straight down, and start showering your head and neck for a few seconds before you get the rest of your body wet. I believe your temples and nape are points, of several, in your body that behave basically like thermostat controls for the body. Cooling those parts lowers your overall body temperature, so thermal shock is minimized. Story 105. One night I could not sleep from a stopped-up nose. I went outside and it was cool. After a couple of minutes, my sinuses opened up and I went inside and fell asleep. On another occasion, when my nose plugged up, it was nasty outside, so I had an idea. I opened the freezer door, stuck my head inside, closed the door all the way to my neck, and breathed normally. Within a minute or two, I was all clear and had a good night's sleep. Since I like to avoid meds, on the occasion my sinuses are blocked, this has been my go-to ever since. If you have this occur, try it. Story 106. 1. Rub a wire coat hanger on your hair, body, clothing to get rid of static in the winter. 2. Rubbing your hair/clothes with a dryer sheet gets rid of campfire and cigarette smell. Can be a lifesaver if you easily get headaches from smoke smells. 3. If having an anxiety attack, try giving yourself a butterfly hug. Tap one arm and then the other alternating while hugging yourself. The pressure from the hug calms your nervous system. The tapping on each side forces your body out of your lower brain survival mode. It causes the more developed thinking part of your brain to process the stimulation. Your right and left hemispheres have to work together. It forces your brain further out of panic mode. Sounds like bullcrap, but I've done it, and while it won't instantly stop an attack, it helps significantly. Story 107. PC wasn't working, giving me a black screen and turning on and off at will. I searched every website and everyone had the exact same problem as me, said that they had to buy new power supplies, motherboards, etc. I was seriously about to order a new PSU when one article said to just take out the little battery on your motherboard, blow on it, and put it back in. I was super skeptical because the PC can run fine without it. However, I was about to spend $300 on new gear, so I thought I'd give it a go, and to my amazement, it worked. 3 months without the PC working, and that was all I had to do. Ever since, I've had similar issues on my PC. I just do that, and it seems to work every time. Story 108. Someone posted this on a life hack thread, and it's really useful for me. It's basically a way to unclog the one or both nostrils if you're congested. I couldn't believe it worked. You have to take a deep breath, exhale all of it, then clench your nose. You will look up and down in 2-second intervals. You'll hold your breath once you feel like you really need to breathe, and once you let go and start breathing again, both nostrils are open. I guess it had something to do with your body sending extra blood to the nose area, or a mechanism to allow air in automatically if you're really running out of breath. Not 100% on the science of how it works, but it definitely does. Story 109. Fruit fly trap. I prefer apple cider vinegar, but something sweet and fragrant should work. 1. Get cup, fill cup enough for a long-lasting fragrance. 2. Cover with plastic wrap. 3. Using pen, push down on the center of the plastic wrap to make an inverse cone. 4. Hold down plastic wrap with rubber band. 5. Punch a hole in the bottom of the inverse cone plastic wrap. 6. Leave near annoying fruit flies and watch them collect in the next few hours. I constantly get asked by family to make these when the suckers appear. Story 110. I only found this out very recently, but so far it has a 100% success rate. Next time someone is experiencing hiccups, tell them the following. Imagine a strawberry. Now cut the strawberry in half. Now cut off the top part with the green leaves. Now imagine a pineapple. Peel the pineapple with a potato peeler. The hiccups will be gone. Apparently, if someone takes the question seriously and imagines each step as instructed, you will hardly ever get to the pineapple. Story 111. If you have a bag or box full of items that are frozen together, pick it up to about shoulder height and drop it onto the floor. The shock will cause most of the items to separate. For bags, make sure you're confident in the strength of the plastic. For example, in my experience, you have about a 50-50 chance of the bag exploding on impact if you try this with bagged ice. For boxes, make sure that the box lands flat on its bottom face. If it lands on any other face, at an angle, or at an edge, it will collapse and the shock will not work nearly as well. You want the contents to absorb the impact, not the packaging. Learned this one working at Dunkin'. Our bagels and croissants came in frozen, and I had to shock pretty much every box before I could use them. Story 112. The only surefire way I've ever found to get rid of hiccups is to chug a large glass of water until you run out of breath. Do not breathe in through your nose while doing this. Also, apparently a lot of people don't know what causes side aches or how to get rid of them. Side aches happen from a buildup of air in your lungs, which happens because, while running, we often breathe in more than we're breathing out. To get rid of the side ache, you just have to get rid of that air buildup by breathing out more than you're breathing in. Consciously take shallow inhales and long exhales. Try to expel as much breath as possible. After doing this a few times, the side ache will go away. Story 113. Fan backwards in the window will suck warm air out and cool down a room faster than anything I've ever tried. Remembered it from a teacher from school when I was suffering from the heaters blasting heat during the winter, like it was a summer in Australia in my dorm because of crappy heating. I hadn't felt the difference in school because of poor airflow, but I was suffering and it was winter with the window open wide, in zero reprieve, which was ridiculous because it's the Canadian border I'm on, and I grabbed my tower fan, plopped it backwards in front of the window on the ledge, and room cooled to manageable temperatures in seconds. Story 114. To get rid of ringing ears, cover your ears with your palms and interlace your fingers behind your skull. You should be making a seal with your palms, more or less. Put your chin on your chest. Now, drum the back of your skull with your fingers as hard as you can for 15 seconds to a minute. Presto, changeo. Ringing in your ears is either gone or reduced considerably. Might take half an hour for some people, but generally it is instant, or it will be reduced and fade to nothing over the next half an hour. This works with chronic ear ringing as well, though it will come back sooner or later if your condition is permanent. Though when it does, you can just drum your head again. Story 115. Using a plastic bottle on a clogged drain. Works like a charm. Fill it up with water, put the bottle on the drain, use some wet cloth to seal the drain around the bottle opening, not necessary if your tub is full of water anyway, and squeeze. Repeat a couple of times if necessary. If you have trouble reinflating your bottle, just make a straw with your fist to blow through so you don't have to put your lips on that dirty bottle. Story 116. A spoonful of peanut butter, like a big dollop with a table-sized spoon, will make hiccups go away. Didn't work? Eat another spoonful. This has never not worked. In the case, if it doesn't, I eat another spoonful and it has worked 100% of the time. I mention it to people who have the hiccups, and for some it's too high a cost. They'd rather hiccup than eat peanut butter. Whatever, but somehow it actually works. Try it, or don't and have hiccups. I don't care. Story 117. Smell alcohol when you're about to pass out so it doesn't happen. I was playing soccer on Saturday, and as a sedentary one I am, I was not inhaling enough oxygen. So there I was, almost fainting, blurred vision and crap. Then a friend gave me a bottle of Chicago with a clove and cinnamon to smell, and almost instantly my sight and hearing returned. So as I was breathing correctly, I was back to normal. You can also lie down and put your legs up. This will make you feel better and will prevent you from fainting, if you're passing out through low blood pressure. So yeah, don't be sedentary, people. Story 118. To cure hiccups, take a wedge of lime, approximately 1/8, coat it in powdered raw cinnamon, not a cinnamon sugar mix, suck on it as if you just shot some tequila, chase with a small amount of water. The cinnamon can be overwhelming to some. Tip your bartender after. 20-plus year bar vet. Been using this since '99 after a bar manager showed it to me. Has worked on well over 90% of the patrons I've used it on. Story 119. Hairspray removes ink stains. A pin linked into your top pocket? Hairspray that mofo. It usually lifts out of the fabric, and then you can wash it out. Don't let the hairspray dry onto the clothes though. Science time. The reason this works is because the same solvent used in non-permanent markers is found in hairspray. Bonus tip. If you accidentally use a permanent marker on a whiteboard, color over it in a dark non-permanent marker. Wait a minute and it'll wipe right off. Because of the same reason. Story 120. Back when I maintained my own car, I would have a crap fit almost every time I had to bleed the brakes. It's a pain to do by yourself. But moreover, the bleed screws always stripped or broke off flush with the caliper. This is because the caliper is steel, but the bleed screws are brass, small, and hollow. The brake fluid flows through the screw. The two different types of metal meant they have different thermal properties, so they can expand and contract at different rates, allowing gaps where corrosion could creep in and freeze the screw. Just this year, I learned if you take a metal rod like a piece of copper and push it down the bleeder screw and tap it into place, it gives the bleed screw enough structure to hold up to the turning force of your wrench, and it 99% of the time turns out now. Then it's just a case of replacing the screws for $1.50 each. No more hours of drilling out broken screws or junkyard hunting for new calipers. Halla effin' luya. Story 121. I played soccer in high school up in the colder areas of the eastern seaboard of the United States. I'd be out for a game and it'd be cold as balls, or even worse, actually snowing as we played. Now, the weather I can deal with, but my phone can't. And one of the greatest things one of the upperclassmen taught me when I was a freshman is that if you put your phone against your body in an insulated place, underneath the shirt, etc., then you'll be able to heat up your phone, and thus your battery, and have your phone, I tried this with an iPhone, recover some of the battery percentage lost to the cold. Now, this only works if your phone randomly jumped from a high percentage way down lower, because that means the cold is affecting your phone's battery. Heat transfer and batteries generally do not mix. I still swear by this trick to this day. Story 122. Butter on a head bruise. A mum friend of mine told me if your kid/toddler whumps their head, put butter on it ASAP and it helps reduce swelling and bruising. I called BS, but my son ran full pelt into a table corner. He had an instant purple bruise line and egg on his head. She whacked butter on it and I swear it went straight down. And within an hour, only a red line on his head, and by nighttime, there wasn't a mark on him at all. I googled it after and it's legit, but I thought it was an old wives' tale. Story 123. Best of my life. I used to get Charlie horses in my legs at night. If you've ever had one, it's a painful muscle spasm that forms a big knot in your calf muscle, and it'll be sore for a day or so after. Years ago, a friend of mine told me that, as soon as it happens, get up and stand on it and stretch it out. Very counterintuitive to put weight on it, and getting up in the middle of the night sucks. But holy cow, does that fix the problem right away? It instantly feels 95% better, and by the time I wake up the next morning, the pain is completely gone. Most recent, I needed to dice an onion for a recipe I was making. I decided to try that method you see people do on YouTube cooking shows. 1. Cut the onion in half. Take hold of the root end of your cutting board. 2. Make a series of cuts with your knife perpendicular to the root. If the root is the North Pole, cut longitude-esque lines. 3. Turn your blade and make several vertical cuts. 4. Return the blade to normal position and perform standard chopping cuts up the onion. Cut latitude lines. It's super easy, fast, and gives you a surprisingly consistent dice. Helps to have a really sharp knife though. Story 124. The best wasp killer on the market is soapy water. Dish soap and water. Put it in a spray bottle, preferably with a stream setting, and you're all set. Dish soap is no worry around kids/pets, but wasps will drop out of the sky dead if you spray them. Can flood a ground wasp nest and eliminate the whole thing too. Works better than the fancy stuff from stores. The TLDR? Wasps breathe through little pores in their exoskeleton. Soap is a surfactant. It breaks the surface tension of water and lets it flow into these little pores, drowning them instantly. Story 125. Drink and pour a cannabis smoke milkshake. Freeze a wet pint glass, ideally a stackable one that can sit in a container of water in the freezer and slide out of the ice. Roll a nice joint, the thickness that only a small portion will slide into a drinking straw. Attach straw to mouthpiece of joint and light it. Then shotty/shotgun it by placing burning end into the hollow of your mouth and holding in place with lips. Easier than it looks or sounds. Aim the straw end to the bottom of the glass and breathe in through nose and exhale slow and steady through the joint straw, circling the glass from bottom up. The cannabis smoke will settle at the bottom and stay far denser than air. You certainly drink the smoke from the cup and, with practice, can lift the cup high overhead and just pour the cold vapor out like liquid falling into your mouth. The colder everything is, the better it works. It is inhaled, not drunk, but moves like liquid. You can put a whole gram or more into a glass, drink it in an easy chug, and you won't exhale a thing, though you may or may not cough. Hashtag applied physics. Story 126. Using undiluted pine sol to degrease engine parts. I bought a non-running motorcycle about a year and a half ago. The carburetors were in desperate need of a good cleaning/rebuild. A coworker of mine told me to take the carburetors apart and put them into a bucket of pine sol and then just let it sit overnight. I was skeptical to say the least, but I figured that pine sol is cheap, so why not? Came in the next morning and pulled the parts out of the soap and rinsed them off. They looked almost brand new. Set of fresh gaskets and some time spent fiddling with the idle mixture, and the bike runs as good as new. I did the same trick on the valve covers for my old Impreza. The pine sol ate through nearly a decade of internal grime that doesn't get cleaned out during an oil change without the need for scrubbing. Story 127. When negotiating, if you want to increase your chances of getting the deal you actually want, try and propose a far worse option for the other person in the deal, and then counter with a much improved offer, the one you actually want them to accept. Changing your job title when entering details for car/motor insurance will often result in a small discount being applied to your quote. Poor wireless signal in your home? Move your router to a location without any significant metallic objects in the near vicinity, and also to a location with the best line of sight where you usually use your devices. Unable to sleep? Focus your mind's eye on a body part that feels stiff/sore or that is uncomfortable for whatever reason. Breathe in and breathe out. Maintain your focus and you should feel more relaxed and in tune with your body. Repeat this for every body part until you fall asleep. If you're selling a product and you give a good representation of it and the customer is interested, instead of asking, "Do you have any questions?" ask them instead, "What are your concerns?" It stimulates the customer to reply almost immediately, releasing their inhibitions about engaging with sales representatives. The more memorable the interaction for the customer, the more likely they are to return to your business or spread a positive message. Story 128. My strategy for defeating Galeem and Darken. You choose Olimar and heal from smash attacks. Use an auto-heal spirit like Wedding Peach. Start hitting Galeem or Darken with a D-Air with your red Pikmin. Quickly hit it with your remaining Pikmin in the form of up smashes or U-Airs, or swap to red Pikmin immediately. Repeat on the other force. When enemy attacks happen, wait till the force is near you, then hit it with a B-Air or F-Air. Rinse and repeat. Wait till one goes down onto the ground, and hit it with continuous F-smashes. When it goes into the second phase of the boss fight, charge up a smash, then hit it with the force as a hitbox. Keep going until they're toast. Maybe hit them with the occasional jab every once in a while, but the whole thing worked for me after I had spent 4 hours trying to beat it with other characters. Story 129. I was on the bus on the way to work. I normally drive, but today I chose the bus. So this dude is acting weird, but I ignore him, but he decides to sit by me. Anyway, he shoves a gun into my ribs and tells me that he wants my money. I'm kinda like in disbelief that this is happening, so I doubt it's a real gun. So I go ahead and touch it, and it's effing real. The whole time he's going on about how he'll shoot me if I don't give him the cash. So my natural reaction is to tell him in my best broken English accent, "No hablo English, señor. Sorry." I actually speak very well and with no accent. Well, he actually bought it and got mad that the person he decided to rob today had no idea what he was saying. So during his rant, I take the moment to ring the bus and get off and dip into a bar. I don't ride the bus anymore. Story 130. When I was at basic training, one of my platoon mates got a nosebleed. My drill sergeant told me to use this trick, which her husband used to do to his soldiers when they had a nosebleed. He was also a DS. Apparently, if you have a nosebleed and you lay down on your back with your feet together and someone kicks the bottom of your feet with a good amount of force, it stops the bleeding. That was the first and only time I ever said, "Oh, F," in front of any of my drill sergeants because of how surprised I was that it worked. Luckily, she had a laugh out of it and didn't smoke the living hell out of me for cussing. Story 131. Dihydrogen monoxide is bad, folks. Edit. I mean the theory of how using scientific-looking words and shoving it into people's faces without letting them research it leads to folks blindly making strong opinions. It's amazing that we form opinions with zero knowledge of what we're talking about, other than a meaningless name and a slanted opinion. It's definitely a holy crap. People actually believe that BS till someone explained it to them or they looked it up moment.